Please accept my free ticket for the Demons review. Oh, oh, oh. Welcome to my review for the 1985 film Demons, directed by Lamberto Bava. This is an Italian horror film. It's a story about a group of people who accept a bunch of free tickets to go to the cinema one day. They don't know what they're going to watch. It could be Winnie the Pooh for all they know. Turns out to be a horror film. That seems to placate most of them. But about 5 minutes into the showing, a demon starts running amok and turning all the cinema goers into other demons. It's a really good premise. It's a good setup. My story of how I first came to watch this is quite interesting, actually. I first saw Demons in geography class back at high school. I bet not a lot of people can say that. So basically, it was the last week of term before the summer. And our geography teacher said that on the Friday of that particular week, if we brought in a film, we could watch it. So I think most people forgot by Friday, but this one boy brought in Demons on VHS. And so we put that on. You know, an 18 certificate film being watched by a bunch of 14-year-olds in high school. I don't think the school would have been too impressed if it had known, but I think our teacher walked out of the room just as this boy was putting it into the VHS player at the front of the room, and so we were good for an hour anyway. Not that most people actually watched the film. I think they were just sat there talking, and it was like just me watching it mainly. But it really impressed me, and I remembered the film, and years later when I was an adult and independent, I bought the film on DVD. It was actually just the second DVD I ever bought. The first was Night of the Living Dead, and I've kept Demons sort of ever since, watched it now and again because it is a good film. And the reason I'm reviewing it today is because I've upgraded for the first time in 20 years to this brand new box set by Arrow, which includes both Demons 1 and 2, and I will unbox that later on in the review. So to go into the story a little bit more, it's almost like a life or death version of tag. So it starts out with just one demon and maybe 25, 30 humans. Then every time a human gets scratched or bit, that means there's one more for the demon side now and one less for the human side. So by the end of the movie, there's a big horde of demons running around in the dark and just a small amount of humans left. There will be spoilers today, by the way. Now, the first thing to say on top of all this is that every death or transformation, if that's what you want to call it, is just filled with amazing practical effects. These were the days before CGI. This was the golden era, you know, proper old school special effects, gore effects. And the stuff you see in Demons is really top of the range stuff. I mean, Tom Savini would have been proud to have this film on his CV. And it's not like it's just one or two moments throughout the film that the Demons can call it signature moments. It's all the way through. Every single kill or violent moment is just filled with really, really good stuff. If it's claws scraping on top of a skull, it's just amazing that the amount of work that they've put into it. If you're the sort of person who bangs on about old school practical effects over CGI like a music lover bangs on about vinyl, then you'll be right at home here. There's this one kill where these two lovers sneak off into the shadows to start kissing each other, and one of the demons just gets a rope and wraps it around the two necks and starts strangling them, so their lips are locked together and you can sort of see all this bloody mush rising between their mouths. It's gnarly, but it's a really good kill. The film is set in Berlin. Now, for many years I've just presumed that it was set in Italy, you know, because I've never really looked into it. Some of it is set in Italy. The stuff that the characters are watching, you know, the film within the film, that was set in Italy. But the main bulk of the action is set in Germany, or Berlin to be more precise. We get to see the cinema from the outside. It's not one of your more modern day multiplexes, but I wouldn't say it looks ancient either. It's just a kind of weird looking European architecture. It's spooky though. I mean, if there were a couple of gargoyles either side of the word cinema, it wouldn't look out of place. The characters are mostly just one-dimensional demon fodder. We don't really get to find out much about any of them. There are still three that I really like, though. One of those is Cheryl, played by Natasha Hovey. She's the main final girl. I've got to say, she is one of the most stunningly beautiful women I have ever seen in my life. She plays a nice character as well. We don't get to find out much about her, aside from the fact that she's a student of some kind. George, the leading man, he starts off in this movie just trying to get his leg over with Cheryl, but by the end of the film, he's turned into this incredibly suave hero, kind of driving around on a motorbike at one point inside the cinema. He's cutting demons apart with a samurai sword. And I like what they do with him at the end of the movie. We're going deep into spoiler territory now. You've been warned for a second time. So just after Cheryl turns, I like how George just sits on the back of the Jeep as it drives away, looking really stony-faced, showing no emotion. Because if you think about it, even though he clearly fancies Cheryl, he's only met her like 2 hours ago. He's not going to be that cut up over her. Early on in the film, when his friend dies, he's really upset. You can see it in his face, as he would be, because he might have known that friend for like years. But with Cheryl, it's just been a couple of hours. So I'm glad they don't get him to stand up on the back of the Jeep and go, "No, stop the Jeep, stop the Jeep." That would have been a lot worse if they'd have done it that way. So whoever wrote this definitely kept their eye on the ball when it came to the character moments. Now, I said earlier that there were 3 characters that I was impressed by in this film. I've mentioned 2 of them. The one I haven't mentioned yet is Tony, the pimp. He comes into the cinema with 2 women on his arm. This guy is absolutely hilarious. I'm not kidding. Everything he says just cracks me up. I think he was dubbed for the movie, but either way, he sounds like Mr. T. He can be talking about just the most innocuous thing, and it makes me laugh. "The weather's nice today." If he said that, I would still laugh. And it's not just me. I watched this film with a friend back at university. It was the first time watch for him at the time, and we were both rolling around laughing together at everything that Tony says. And when Tony dies halfway through the film, my friend was like, "No, don't kill him off." Oh, he was absolutely gutted. It has to be said, there's lots of things in this film which end up remaining a mystery and never explained. That might annoy some people. Not me personally, but some people. So how this outbreak begins, one of Tony's girls at the beginning of the film scratches herself on this random silver mask which is lying around in the foyer of the cinema. How this mask got its demon powers, or where the mask even comes from, never explained. The people get their tickets for this showing from a random guy at the train station wearing a different kind of silver mask. Who he is or where he comes from, what his deal is, never explained. And then later on in the movie, this same guy just randomly turns up on the roof of the cinema. What he's doing there, never explained. And he's turned bad by this point, and yet he's not a demon. He's still human. He tries to kill the 2 main characters who are left. Why? Never explained. Also, at one point, everybody tries to get out of the cinema, as you would expect, because there's demons inside the cinema, but there's a random concrete wall which has just magically formed up at the entrance, so they can't get out. How this wall got there, never explained. And my personal favourite unexplained moment is when this one girl, she's dying, except she doesn't transform in the usual way. She sort of ends up bent over and a demon comes out of her back, and it's the only demon in the movie to not take on the features of the person that it's coming out of. So this demon comes out of her back, and I'm thinking to myself, is this meant to be like the main king demon or something? But the demon leaves the room, and that's literally the last time we see that particular demon. So it's a really weird thing that just gets left there. I love the music in this film as well. There's cool tracks that play all the way through. The song which plays at the start, I don't know if that's meant to be like the unofficial, or the official, I should say, Demon's theme, or whether it's just some song that they ripped out of the German charts at the time, but it's definitely the song that I think of when I think of Demons in a musical sense. It plays at the end as well, on the end credits. That scene at the beginning when Cheryl's riding the train, it's really funny because she's literally the only normal looking commuter on this train. Everybody else is like a punk rocker or somebody else dressed up in a really weird way. It reminds me of a game I used to play in the video arcades called Crime Fighters. You used to have to deal out your own brand of vigilante justice, and one of these levels you were on a train going from carriage to carriage, just kind of, knocking out punks. And totally the start of this film reminds me of Crime Fighters. It's weird. So let's take a quick break to unbox this then. This is the front, and on the back we can see the wealth of features that are in it. The only thing I don't like about this is the sticker things on the front. They come off very, very easily. These are going to get knackered very, very quickly. I can see myself having to put like bits of sellotape to substitute for those eventually. So it opens up in quite a unique way like this, with the sort of pictures from Demons 1 and 2 there sort of coming together. And inside we've got poster. This section holds both the discs, cinema ticket, some kind of advertisement, and this is the best thing about it. I think it's a booklet, but it's literally the first time ever I've seen a booklet in a release that's been hardback. So I think it's 64 pages, and it's got a few essays and things inside. Lots of pictures and stuff from both movies. It's really cool, very glossy. I sat down to read this the other night actually, and I'd only got halfway through it after quite a bit of time. It's quite lengthy. It's a really good read. Some good stuff in there. And there we have it. Now for the negative section. I've only really got one which is worth mentioning, but it's a big one. So about halfway through the movie, this subplot is introduced where we start to follow the progress of these four people outside of the cinema as they're cruising along the high street. Now at first this is a nice breather from the main action and we get to hear Billy Idol, but slowly we start to realise just what dicks these characters are. I mean, there's three guys, one girl, and they're basically just cokeheads who are complete shits to each other. The main leader who's driving the car, he's like a poor man's Sylvester Stallone, he really is, and his buddies are not much better. There's a weird moment where one of the guys is just scooping coke off the girl's tit, and she's getting really aroused by it. I'm not, because she's an absolute mess to look at, and it's just a really weird moment to have in the middle of an otherwise really well-made film. These four people just remind me of a failed punk band who only ever wrote one song, and that was a cover, and they spent all their money on coke instead of stuff that they needed, like guitars and amps, and one day they all OD'd under a bridge. Let's not let that derail the review, because this was always going to be a positive review. I have loved Demons for a long, long time, and I'll continue to love it long into the future. If you've never tried this film, you should absolutely do it, because it is classic 80s Italian horror at its absolute best. It's got a great premise as well. It sort of reminds me of the beginning of Scream 2, when there's Scream type stuff going on the screen at the same time as it's going on in the cinema, except in this case they've made an entire movie out of it. I actually think Scream 2 would have been awesome if they just stayed in the cinema for the whole film, and the goal would have been to try and figure out who the killer was in like hundreds of guys wearing Scream costumes, but that's a discussion for another day. For now, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I've given Demons. I kind of feel like I should have samurai swords in the bag today instead of axes, but not to worry. Production value on this channel is not massive. I say that having just bought this massively expensive arrow set, which was not cheap, but anyway. 4 bloody axes out of 5 for Demons. This was never going to be a 5 out of 5, but you know what? I probably would have given it 4.5, but for that stupid subplot with the punks. So I've nudged it down to 4 out of 5. That's still an excellent score because it's an excellent movie, and I will definitely be back to do Demons 2 very, very soon. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye. We do have a quick pin for the horror locations map today. This film is set in Germany, I believe, Berlin. So I'll quickly sneak that in there. It's getting a little bit packed in the Europe area of the world map section, but it's the first pin for Germany, so there we are.